Great to see everyone coming into our webinar. This is, we're getting up to 296, I think, webinar number 296, which is pretty good. And our 300th webinar or seminar is approaching, and it's going to be on the topic of where higher education is going in the geopolitical environment, and also with the possibility of digital transformation as well. So those two sort of elements. But today we've got Marek Kwiek with us, and Marek's webinars on this world of science are always really valuable and generate a lot of enthusiasm during the webinar and as a result of the placement on YouTube. So I'm going to take you through through the webinar protocols, and then I'll introduce Marek. Now, remember that the webinar is being recorded, and it'll be posted on our website within 24 hours or so, and you'll be able to access it through our YouTube channel, but through our webinar site, and also directly into YouTube. Now, during the webinar, please keep yourself muted unless you've been asked to speak or ask a question. There's no need to have your video on either during the webinar, but please do turn them both on when you're actually participating in the discussion section of the webinar. We recommend using speaker view so that you can more clearly see who is talking at a given time. Now, to ask a question, use the chat function. Put your question or your statement that you'd like to make in response to the presentation in the chat. And on the basis of what's coming into the chat, I'll be able to select the Q&A participants. So it's a good idea to come in fairly early, because if you come in late, there's a good chance you'll miss out, because we'll have a full speaking list by that stage. Now, when you're invited to ask a question, and I'll send you a warning in the chat beforehand, when you're invited to ask your question, please unmute yourself, most important step, switch on your video, and then tell us who you are and where you're from, and then launch into your question or your statement. Marek, I have a small confession to make. I don't have your bio in front of me, but you are an established research professor in the
Mickiewicz University
in Poland, right?
In Poland,
and you hold a UNESCO chair, right?
Yeah.
And you publish a lot on science, the academic profession, international comparisons. You're particularly expert on Europe, but you do the world, and you're interested now, I think, in symmetrics as well as in higher education as a field, and you're increasingly working with large data sets, and that, of course, is of great interest to many people. So
correct.
At this point, let me hand over to you. You can introduce yourself further if you need, and give us your presentation and your slides at this point.
Thank you so much, Simon. Let me open the presentation. It's share screen, presentation, and from the beginning.
We can see your.
Oh, yeah. You can see it, don't you?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's a question. Once highly productive, perhaps always highly productive. I've always been very much interested in high productivity, and that's another strand of research which I've been doing in the past few, say, a year or a year and a half. A research productivity from a life cycle perspective, not a point in time, but lifetime, from your 30s to your end 60s, like 30, 40 years. The structure of the presentation is simple. It's intro, research questions, data, method, sample, a bit of methodology, and I'll draw your attention to what I termed lifetime biographical histories and lifetime publication histories. Then prestige normalized productivity, so productivity related to journals in which we published. Then classes, academic career classes, I'll be using various classes, and then the results very briefly, further research, enormously interesting, well, further research or even ongoing research, and a few final words. It's no more than 30 minutes, as I always promised to Simon. Just my gratitude, You can see what I was talking about in these fantastic seminars. Men-women collaboration patterns, elite journals and prestige generations through publications, globalization of science, and especially the increasing role of individual scientists. And last time, academic profession studies going global, using big data, what we gain, what we lose. So it's my gratitude and thank you so much, Simon, for these opportunities. Now, introductory remarks. I'm thinking about the long careers in science. On the right, you can see career, and as there are 3 steps, you can imagine assistant professorship, associate professorship, and full professorship. Still, only several countries are able to link productivity or citation impact with biological age and with academic positions. Why? The reason is access to reliable data. The data are not around. We need age and biological age, and we need academic positions, and this data are not around. The studies come from Norway, the USA, Canada, but also Italy, Poland, what we have been doing in the past few years, and Spain. That's a statement. Some scientists stay on in the science sector for decades. Polish full professors studied here today, they stayed for 30 to 40 years. I've been doing this research with my fantastic colleague, Dr. Wojciech Roszka from Poznan team. Very briefly, cohorts matter. In very simple terms, some cohorts are more research productive than others because of competition. For instance, when they started their careers, we all start under different conditions, so we are more competitive or less competitive, and we stay on in academia for decades. So if you look at the Lexis diagram, I took it from generally demographic studies. I have full professors, and they are aging vertically. Their age is increasing, so they are 30 or 40.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Hello, this is Radek. We cannot see. I mean, your slides are not moving. We are still on slide 1. Just so you know, and people are
okay.
Putting this in the chat.
Okay, thank you so much.
Apologies for disturbing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's important.
You want to go to maybe go out of the slides again, Marek, and then back in, see how we go with that.
Yes, we will try this. We are on slide 4. Okay. Okay, so I do share screen, and I'm opening this. And let me perhaps, are you seeing this?
We can see number 5.
Number 5, and you can see 6 and 7 and everything.
Yes, that's now moving now.
So let me move it to the end. Please don't watch it too closely at the moment. It's just a teaser. Let's make sure it's moving. Okay, it was just a teaser, and it's fine, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going well.
It's going well. Now we are in slide 5.
Do you want to take us gently through 2, 3, and 4? I mean,
yes.
perhaps just show us without talking, because you've already spoken.
Yes. So 1, structure. 2. Is it changing? 3. It was my gratitude. 4. Long careers.
Not moving, Marek. It's not moving again.
It's not moving again.
No, we've still got slide 1.
Okay. If you, Simon, could perhaps, I'm just thinking if you could show my slides. Do you think?
I don't have them, Marek. I think let's just try once more. Just go out and in. And
okay.
You restored it before, so we should be able to do it again. Now it's moving.
Okay. I'm just thinking I could be also, Simon, showing the screen not full, but well, as it goes. So maybe it's fine because it was fine.
Yeah, I think it'll work once we've got started again. Okay, let's just leave it at 4 and go forward from there. See if you can move it forward.
Okay, from the beginning. 4.
Now you're on 1.
I'm on 1. Okay, and now if it's small, you can see the changes, and when it's small.
Yes, it's moving. It's moving.
Okay, so maybe I'll stay with the small screen.
Okay.
There is some problem with big screen, and
That's, yeah. Okay.
it's okay, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. We can
Okay,
see
so this is career. Yes, three stages of career. Lexis diagram taken from demographics, and you can see it. Okay, I'm moving to number 6, and you can see it, don't you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so theories of research productivity. 3 major theories, very briefly. I will focus on the one of them at the end. Sacred spark theories. Sacred spark theory, cumulative advantage theory, and utility maximizing theory. Sacred spark theory is simple. Some people are just superb in research. They're motivated by an inner drive to do science and by a sheer love of the work. It's a simple theory. Then cumulative advantage theory from Merton. Productive scientists are likely to be even more productive. And utility maximizing theory related to age. Older scientists tend to reduce their research efforts because it brings in less, well, for instance, financial returns, but also less fun. So other tasks may be more advantageous in the future. More or less, all these theories are complementary rather than competing in explaining research productivity. Now, just one word, because we are running out of time. There's what I termed full professors literature and all ranks literature. Full professors literature is about is focused on full professors only. It's rare. And all ranks literature is about all ranks, including full professors. So certainly all ranks literature outnumbers full professors literature. But there's one exception. Generally in career studies, we are interested in gender discrimination in promotions to full professorships. And you can see a couple of stories, excellent papers on Italy, Sweden, on Germany, like all full professors in psychology or all full professors in sociology. Excellent papers. Now, my hypothesis. Well, I will not read the hypothesis, just maybe 2 questions. Is it slide 8, Simon? Is it correct?
Yes, Marek. Good morning.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm just worried. We may be losing. You may be losing me again. Okay, just 2 questions. Have current top performing full professors always been top performing? That's the overarching question. And have current low performing full professors always been low performing? That's another symmetrical questions. I'm not mentioning the hypothesis at this time. They are about disciplinary differentiation, gender differentiation, and generally about persistence over time. Are those who are today highly productive, have they been before highly productive as well? So these are the questions. Very briefly about the data. We are using Polish Science Observatory. It's 100 scientists, 100,000 scientists, 400,000 publications. And on top of it, this is what we've been using for a few years, 2-3 years now. On top of it, we have metadata for 1 million publications from ICSR lab. Thanks again to Elsevier for this data. It's enormous use for us at the moment. And we are allocating various attributes to all scientists, but also to our sample. Our sample is slightly more than 2,300 full professors from 14 STEM disciplines. One more thing. We are using dominant discipline for each full professor. We count all cited references to all publications lifetime. As I told last time at this seminar, that Simon is, say, political scientist, because the most of his cited references are, say, from political sciences. We don't know, but still anything may happen. So we find the modal value. We also use the academic age. So we need the year of the first publication. And also in our data set, we have date of birth, enormously important and rare, date of birth, and dates of receiving doctoral degree, habilitation degree, and professorship title. So the data are key. You see the distribution very briefly, the distribution of full professors. You see that the difference between female and male full professor is not that big in terms of distribution, except for there are 3/4 of full professors are men and 1/4 are women. Now, constructing individual lifetime biographical and individual publication histories. We do this procedure for every full professor. We have all the dates, we have all the metadata, and we allocate professors in different classes: high productivity class, middle productivity class, and low productivity class. And we see how they move between classes over time. My feeling was that they don't move too much, and it's true, So we study scientific activity spanning over several decades. Well, history matters, and I will explain in a moment. So we are using a longitudinal approach. We look at transitions between productivity classes, but we compare full professors with other full professors at the time when they were associate professors or at the time when they were assistant professors. So we basically compare apples with apples and never compare apples to oranges. So in other words, we analyze the productivity of scientists as they get older, over time, over 30 to 40 years, and as they move up their academic ladders. So it's not a cross-sectional approach, it's a longitudinal approach. One more important thing, we're not using productivity as number of publications, raw number. We use what I termed journal prestige normalized productivity, which is related to journals. I'm using, well, Scopus database, as said before, and all publications are in journals, and journals have their percentile ranks from 0 to 99. So I'm using kind of, I'm linking prestige of journals with publications, with articles, so that productivity is reflecting workload. As it's put here as a comparison, higher education, 95th percentile, and higher education forum, 29th percentile. Enormously different scholarly efforts, different investments, different rejection rates, different reviewers. So I'm using this workload and this, well, in STEM disciplines, it's the fact of life. A vertical journal certification is the fact of life. And I'm referring only to STEM disciplines here. So it's clear that some journals are good, others are a little worse, and others are just open to everyone. You can publish whatever, whenever you want, with some reviews or not. I wrote a paper about it, the prestige economy of higher education journals. Well, whatever we say, better journals or top journals are in the 90 to 95 percentile. Well, I'm using also different classes. Let's suppose we have 2,300 full professors, and I allocate them to different classes. They are in different productivity classes, as explained, top, middle, and bottom, but they are also in different promotion age classes. What was the age of each professor when he or she became an assistant or associate professor? Or what was the speed of this promotion? How many years did it take? We have all those data and we use it. So there are 3 academic career classes used: productivity, promotion age, and promotion speed. It is explained here very briefly. Every full professor has 3 classes in terms of productivity, 2 classes in terms of promotion age, and 2 classes in terms of promotion speed. If you look at promotion age, you can be young associate professor, or you can be old full professor, depending on the date, on your biological age, or exactly the dates. But also you have a speed. You can be typical track full professor, or you can be slow track full professor. It's all matter of years spent between promotions. So this is a pretty simple classification. There are some limitations I will not discuss now, so that I will gain maybe 1-2 minutes, but anyway, non-publishing scientists are not included. Certainly, there's no way to use Scopus for those who don't publish. And also we have near perfect biographical data from the registry and not so much perfect bibliometric data. So there is some level of limitations. Most biases are well known. They are the linguistic, geographical, disciplinary biases of Scopus, but also of Web of Science. We know the biases and their results. Just look here. That's probably one of the crucial figures today. You have 3 periods of academic careers. The first period and the first column is between becoming assistant professor and becoming associate professor. The second column between associate professor and full professor. And the third column is when you are already full professor and later. And you have productivity classes. There are 3 productivity classes: top, middle, and bottom. And you either belong to top 20% or to middle 60% or to bottom 20%. And the data behind this is on the right. When there are some exceptions and some examples, what I want to draw your attention to, because the time is running, well, most of all, more than 50% of full professors who are today full professors, top performing full professors, the upper 20%, have been so when they were associate professor, and even more so, they have been top performing when they were associate professors. Look at mathematics, which is an extreme case. 70% of current top performing full professors have been so between doctorate and habilitation. So when they were assistant professors, you see those squares on the right. The stability is enormous. It's like 60-70%. Once highly productive, almost always highly productive. And another example is medical sciences, the largest discipline. And you see here how difficult it is to get from bottom to top. You see those almost invisible flows from top to bottom, and very thin flows from bottom to top, and very thin flows from top to bottom. So mobility, cross-class mobility, so to speak, is very limited, very limited. The chances for top to bottom and bottom to top mobility are relatively limited. We did it for all disciplines. And the picture is more or less similar. Very high stability for top performing classes, very low chances for top to bottom mobility, and very small chances, but a bit bigger, for bottom to top mobility in terms of productivity over time. Let me stress again, we are talking about 30 to 40 years. We are talking about current full professors and how productive they were 20 or 30 years ago, when they were assistant professors and when they were associate professors. When you look at the lifetime mobility, it's a different approach. Almost half of professors currently highly productive were also 20, 30 years ago currently highly productive. So it's like looking at just 2 columns. Here we have 3 columns, and here in this live direct approach, you have just 2 columns. You have the data here. I'm not going to discuss it. It's just the details, including gender. And very briefly, what models say. Well, models say exactly what this descriptive statistics says, which is very rare. What are the major predictors of belonging to top productivity classes from logistic regression models? We did 6 models. Just 3 predictors. First, you need to be earlier a highly productive associate professor. You see the increase by more than 300%. You need to be earlier a highly productive assistant professor. Also another increase of odds of being highly productive today. And finally, it's good to be a full professor early. So belong to this young full professors category. You see full professor on the right. We did it for all other ranks, but it's it's not so important at the moment. What is important is that gender doesn't matter, and actually age doesn't matter. No matter all those all these predictors are gender is not a predictor, in other words. It doesn't matter. Also university type, no matter where you're located, if you are fully located, if you are if you are highly productive, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. If your university is research productive, it doesn't matter. So there are three very, very simple predictors. We had individual level variables and we had organizational level variables. So gender doesn't matter. Age, both biological age and academic age, well, really doesn't matter. Career milestones, age for doctorate, age for postdoctoral degree, age for full professorship. Actually, in the model, it doesn't matter. You see you see nothing here in model 1. And finally, career classes, age promotion class or speed promotion class, not really, except for of you becoming a full professor early, a young person. It is a very strong predictor of belonging to top productivity classes later on. Ongoing research. We've been heavily working on OECD economies because, as you may know, I'm focused on global academic profession, and our approach is usually we do a detailed Polish study with more than perfect data. We have fantastic data set with perfect data. So we, so to speak, sharpen our tools and also sharpen our concepts and ideas, and then we move on to the global scale. So here the question is simple: do productivity patterns found for Poland hold in a global context? A global context would be advanced economies, about 5 million, more than 4 million scientists, very strict definitions of who counts as a scientist, which publications count in our productivity studies. We don't have, certainly, we don't have age globally. We have age for Poland, we don't have age globally. So I'm trying to use, the concept of older scientists, which are scientists who have been publishing for between 25 and 35 years. It's a proxy of full professors in Poland. They've been in the system for years and they've been publishing for years. We have a minimum threshold of publications in the study. So it's a parallel approach to scientists globally. Certainly, it's much more difficult to defend this approach at a global level than to defend our approach in Poland from this approach where data sets are near perfect. If we have almost everything about Poland, it's relatively easy to defend the approach. Here it's more complicated, so studies are going on. We want to finish it by November or October or November. We will have academic age rather than biological age. We studied it for Poland, and we know there's very good correlation between academic age and biological age when we think about STEM. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine. Correlation is very, very high, like 0.9. So we will construct retrospectively again 4 career stages. We had 3 stages for Poland, but we will have 4 pages globally, beginning, early, middle, and late career. And those late career would be regarded as if they were Polish full professor. Again, it's a proxy, but most of what we are doing is a proxy anyway. So I think it's going to be defendable. What is the major issue? Well, certainly our Polish observatory data set is unbeatable. Its precision, its accuracy it's unbeatable because it derives parts of the data from a national registry of scientists. It's unbeatable. And there are no registries available on a global scale. So there is an issue how to move from the Polish study to the global study, but we are working on it. And final words, a bit of implications maybe. Well, first, Only the combination of reliable administrative and biodemographic data and raw Scopus metadata for 50 years allowed us to do what we did. It allowed us to produce current productivity classes and retrospectively past productivity classes. Let us remember, every full professor today has been allocated retrospectively to productivity classes as an associate professor and as an assistant professor. So if we do not have Scopus metadata for 50 years, we can't do this. So coming back to my previous presentation here for this webinar, the power of structured big data, in this case Scopus, but could be Web of Science or other global data. Well, we need it for every professor. First, to define discipline, lifetime, all cited references, to define and calculate prestige-related productivity. I'm really unsatisfied with raw productivity in which publication in a lower level journal or lower ranked journal equals to publication in top journals. I cannot accept it. So I'm using this prestige related concept of productivity. Again, without big data, we cannot allocate all publications or articles only to career stages. We cannot do this. We don't have the data in Poland, maybe somewhere else, but not in Poland. We need articles. We need 50 years or 40 years minimum. Also to have academic age, first publication. Remember, for full professor, first publication was, say, 30, 40, or sometimes 35 years ago. So I would say big data are enormously useful. One more thing, or the third final word, every full professor was compared with their exact peers. So with the current peer professors when they were at the same stage of careers, when they're assistant and associate professor. We are all the time comparing apples with apples. And finally, other options seem to take time. We can follow scientists over time through periodic surveys. This is what happens in Norway, but it's very difficult. And also surveys have their own, I would say, big limitations too. I was doing academic profession peer surveys for more than a decade. So I know the limitations. So other options are time consuming, and also they have their own limitations. And the implications, if any, what do we see from this the study? Hiring of low productivity researchers has long-term consequences, and also hiring of high productivity researchers have long-term consequences. The consequences are for institutions and for the system, because people stay in academia for decades. In Poland, they stay for 30 to 40 years. There's immobility in the system. People stay for many years. The moment we accept someone, he or she mostly is there, mostly. So productivity emerges as largely predetermined, which supports the sacred spark theory of productivity. Some of us are productive, some of us are not productive, and it continues over decades. This is a major maybe implication. Productivity is somehow or largely predetermined. So once highly productive, forever highly productive? Yes. In some areas, yes. Half of scientists belong to the same productivity class throughout their entire research careers, always at the bottom or always at the top. And the movements between top and bottom and top, these transitions are at a very minimal level. This mobility is limited. So the final word, maybe I've been studying inequality in science cross-sectionally. I did surveys and I studied people as they are at the moment of taking a survey, a point in time, cross-sectionally. Now I'm studying the same inequality existing over time, longitudinally, or even over lifetimes in this case. And we see this inequality from two perspectives. Cross-sectionally, right now or anytime, you maybe remember or know my rule, 10-50 rule, 10% of scientists produce 50% of publication. The rule comes from surveys across Europe. And now we see this inequality also over time. We see the same people being at the top. at the same people being at the bottom for I would say decades in this Polish case. Okay, thank you so much. We had a number of interruptions, and I'm not quite sure it was as clear as it should be, but anyway, it's a contribution to inequality research. In this case, inequality in science research. It's half an hour, Simon, no matter what.
Well done, Marek. I must apologize to you for the difficulties we've had today. And of course, if Trevor had been running the webinar, I'm sure he would have been able to run your slides for you and it would have been much easier, which is what we've done in the past. However, what we can do, of course, is post the slides along with posting the webinar itself. And people will be able to access the slides in full screen. And because, I mean, the graphs and the tables are not particularly visible in the size that people have seen them today. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and hope that some others will come forward to do so also. My first question is about doctoral students. You mentioned a category of beginning researchers. I wonder if you could isolate through this mechanism the contributions that doctoral students alone make. I guess that you could only then do that if they're identified as doctoral at the point of submission, because obviously the contribution of the doctorate would continue into the early years of an academic career. You know, maybe the next year might see a lot of publishing if someone's got an academic position by that stage, but you could possibly isolate what's been published from the doctoral identity, if you like, earlier.
Yes, that's a good question. We have data about scientists, academic scientists from the registry. So we could browse around and try to have some data about doctoral students, but it's not manageable at the scale we are using. We have every scientist from doctorate onwards, but not before doctorate. So basically, these are times between doctorate and habilitation and professorship, and after professorship, but not before. It would be nice to consider it, but I know in advance, in terms of data, it's enormously complicated. Well, it's a waste. It's a pity, but we cannot do this at the moment.
Yeah, so you really have to just combine all of the early career stages into one, really, don't you? A second question is about, I think you were hinting at this, possible further development of the work, comparing the patterns of concentration of high productivity researchers to the tiering of institutions, you know, institutional structures in different countries, or, you know, possibly comparing patterns of concentration of HPRs, you might call them, high productivity researchers, to national factors, and identifying, you know, where the clumps of the largest clumps are. Maybe you can also do that in relation to disciplines, although it's complicated by the fact that disciplines have got different citation practices and so on.
Yeah, it's the issue of concentration is enormously important. We are experimenting right now with dividing all institutions into well, there are two approaches. One is Shanghai 1000 and the rest. Right. Another is high concentration, like Shanghai 100, and another 40 and the rest. Let's consider we have, well, 8,000 institutions with publications in Scopus, 8,000. So whether it's 100 or 500, basically doesn't make big difference. But still, this is another organization variable which we will use at the global level. For the Polish study, we use just research-intensive IDUB, which is Polish National Excellence Initiative, versus the rest. So we had 10 versus 80. Or 10 versus 90. And interestingly, in those models, research intensity doesn't emerge as a predictor. Well, it just doesn't matter. It's interesting, but Poland is specific. We are specifically disconcentrated or not concentrated. So top researchers, I would say it may emerge almost anywhere.
That's encouraging, I think. And let me ask you something else. I think you've probably thought a lot about this, but the methods you're using aren't necessarily pointing you to the answer, but it may be something that you'd like to study in using different methods. Drivers of high productivity. what factors, what conditions, what elements are associated with high productivity. I mean, obviously we're looking at correlations, not causes here, but correlations are suggestive. So, I mean, can you see yourself going down that track, trying to establish drivers of high productivity?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I would never say one approach would make it all. I spent years on top performers and what drives high performance in terms of what you can draw from surveys. So I'm really involved in thinking about surveys because there are issues and behaviors and attitudes and perceptions and feelings which you can find only in surveys. Possibly interviews, but it's time consuming and the numbers are small unless you have hundreds of doctoral students who do it for you. Normally you would have to you would have to do a survey. So yes, all those drivers, well, we can find them in big data somehow, like mobility, high or low, changing countries, often or not often, number of publications, or also to an extent types of publication, types of journal, publishing patterns. Is it only top or across the board from top to bottom? You can ask a number of questions about drivers. Some would and answers would come partly from big data or from Web of Science, core collection, whatever. And I would defend this idea that some of the answers would come only from surveys. It's impossible to find the answers in this type of data when we talk about millions of scientists. Yes, I remember about it, Simon. I would never do data sets only of this type only.
Yeah, and of course all those questions about affect and behavior and values and so on, and identity. I mean, you can't really get at those using these methods. Yeah. So we've got a couple of people coming through in the chat. I might come back in again, Marek, further on. Yusuf Oldek is our first questioner, and then he'll be followed by Ian McNay, who's got a couple of questions. Yusuf.
Hello. Thank you, Professor Marek, for this really nice, informative presentation.
Hello.
I was intrigued by this metric, prestige normalized journal productivity. And sorry if you already explained this, but did you calculate this yourself with your team, or is this already provided by Scopus? Thank you very much.
Yes, that's a very good point. Certainly, we have, let us say, 1 million publications. Say we choose articles only, let's say 0.8 million. And every article in this case is located in some Scopus journal. And every journal has a percentile rank. Yeah, higher education, 95. As I said, studies in higher education, 95. And we go down and down and down to say 30. So every article, when you calculate productivity to every person, you locate all publications for every person. In this case, full professor. And it's not one per publications, it's 0.95 if it's higher education, or it's 0.29 if it's as I said, higher education. I forgot what was it in Tokyo, higher education, whatever. I published there, by the way, not in Tokyo, but in Japan anyway. So no, Scopus doesn't do this. You need individual person, then attached individual publications, then attach journals to each publication, and then you calculate it so that finally you have productivity over 4 years for every period. First period until between assistant professor and associate professor, second period associate professor to full, and third period full and later. So you need all type of data, biographical, like your age, and those publication metadata. You can't get it from Scopus normally. We have an agreement with ICSR lab, Elsevier's lab, not to get the data, but to have access to data. So we produce algorithms and we get answers back, which say, it's more aggregated data. We never receive micro data, which you have for Poland normally here. But yes, we do it ourselves.
Yusuf, thanks very much for your question. Feel free to join the discussion again if you want. And Ian McNay, your first question, Ian.
Hello, Marek, and thank you for that.
Hello.
As you know, my interest is in institutional culture. I have two questions. One is, there are joint publications. So are those who are writing together, they're similar? Are they peer? Sorry, somebody just arrived at the back door and he's delivering something, but he's leaving it there, so that's fine. This didn't happen in the office. Sorry, so do highly productive researchers work together at whatever stage? That links, I suppose, to, do highly productive assistant profs come through their doctorates under highly productive full profs? So that's the first question. Shall I do the two at once, Simon?
Maybe one by one,
Okay.
if you don't mind. Yeah, excellent issue. I didn't have time maybe to mention it. It's in slides. We used the full account approach rather than fractional account approach. So every publication was counted more or less as one. Not exactly one, but more or less as one. Why? Because this is a Polish way of counting publications individually and for academic units. So it's easier for us to think in terms of full counting. It's relatively widely used. And remember, we are talking only about STEM. In STEM, 90% of publications are multi-authored publications.
Yeah.
Whereas less than 10% of single-authored papers. And I'm producing productivity classes separately for each 14 STEM discipline. So we have different publishing patterns, say in astronomy compared to mathematics. Mathematics is a sole authored, much more sole authored area, but we make all classifications based on disciplines. So we never mix, astronomers and physicists with say mathematicians or biochemists. So we do it internally within disciplines.
I acknowledge the STEM publication pattern is different. I mean, when you have an article with 500 authors, we don't encounter that in social sciences. Anyway, my second one relates to some extent to that. There appear to be a significant minority of highly productive researchers who don't get promoted. Am I reading your data correctly? And there appear to be some full profs who have never been very productive. I wonder if you have any ideas to explain these anomalies.
It's I would say enormously important. We have studies from different countries, and the one I've read recently was about was about Israel. There is a number of full professors who, when you look at productivity classes or productivity, well, should not be maybe full professors. It is the Polish case. We know it, but still, these are professors who are in those bottom, once bottom productivity class, always bottom productivity class, but yeah. Still you are a full professor. We don't have those who are not promoted in this data set. So in a way, we are talking about survivors only. Okay. And another idea is women in science. Incidentally, the share of women who are constantly, persistently in top classes is higher than that of men. The survivors, the women who go from bottom to top in terms of academic career, are enormously productive across the board, from beginning to the end. I didn't use the slide here, but we have a nice gender analysis for professors over time, male versus female.
You're going to emphasize inequalities again, aren't you, Marek?
I mean, in this data set, we have only dates and quantities. There's no way, we would need to talk to people who are full professors. How it happened, you are a full professor. We know it happens. We know it's an issue of seniority. You are getting older and older, and finally, with something, you become a full professor in Poland. Not all of us, but some of us, just because of the passage of time. you are, generally acknowledged to become, and you do become a full professor. But it's an issue which we cannot find in the data. It's very difficult.
I had a fall in productivity when I was head of department, when I then became just a research and teaching prof. Then the productivity increased, including publishing work from research I'd done while I was a head of department. So there are those career changes that obviously have an effect on the profile of progression.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Simon.
I mean, you wouldn't expect a perfect correlation between academic ranks and scholarly productivity. I mean,
Yeah, you wouldn't.
I mean, it's who you know, or whether you do admin work and policy commentary and get involved in the university as a good servant. Or
but I think
also
the
what the Chinese would call the guanxi.
I mean, obviously, people will reach academic promotion through in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
Yes, but scholarly productivity is a player in that, and I think one of the ways you can study academic career structures and compare different career structures in different institutions, in different countries, and in different disciplines is the extent to which there is a correlation between scholarly productivity, as in terms of high-tier journals, and academic promotion. I mean, my limited experience of the English-speaking world tells me that, for example, that in leading research universities, that relationship will be quite close often, whereas in a lot of other institutions will be less close. And there's perhaps been and that's the case in the English-speaking world. It may not be the same everywhere else. There's certainly been changes, and my sense is that a large and productive and important teaching load is somewhat more likely to get you promoted than it was, in many places. It's beginning to creep in as a kind of secondary way of forward, and pedagogical innovation and program leadership and those sorts of things, as well as number of classroom hours and number of bodies that you teach, is in play. And there's always been, of course, the potential in some systems for admin leadership, head of department role, head of faculty role, those sorts of things to bring with it sort of a tendency for more rapid promotion or an automatic designation as full professor. There's always that potential as well. So yeah, it's sort of interesting to kind of unpick all of this. We don't know much about academic career structures. I mean, Christy Muslin did some really good work earlier on comparing them in Europe, especially at the point of entry and the point of and the tenure process, if there was one. But we don't know a lot, and I think Marek's work could be quite useful in contributing to those sorts of studies.
Yeah, we have teaching profs, but that's about excellence. But I also work in a university where the governors made all the senior management team professors. And
yeah,
three of them had no productivity in research terms whatsoever.
Do they have PhDs?
It makes prof have a whole different meaning.
Yeah. Well, and you could cite other examples of academic designations which are not related necessarily to scholarly merit. But anyway, let me bring in Marta Kolaska, who's got a question in the chat. Marta.
Right, Professor Kwiek, thank you so much for presenting really interesting findings. Following on your comment with regard to gender and age, I would like to ask a question whether you can see already some trends emerging in OECD countries. I'm asking this since a number of colleagues from STEM disciplines actually noted that their productivity went down because of various factors, such as carrying obligations during COVID times in particular. So I'm just wondering if you could possibly give us a little bit of a bigger picture. Thank you in advance.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are several ongoing processes. Every decade, there are more and more new women publishers. And if you look at the big data, you see that, let us say, 20 years ago, it was 30% new publishers, those who are seen in Scopus, were female. And today it's 40% or more. So there's ever more publishing women around. When I look at the Scopus data, well, in detail, it's like when you look at top performers, their share of the productivity of men is higher than the productivity of women. But when you get rid of the top 10%, and when you look at the lower 90% or just regular scientists, not top scientists, women are more productive in general than men. Certainly, I'm talking about OECD area because of the data. We don't have gender for many countries, including China or including Southeast Asia. We just don't have algorithms which say men, women with percentage higher than 80%, with certainty higher than 80%. So I'm sticking to OECD area because gender is more or less defined at the level of say 70%. So what we know, there are more and more women in STEM. They are more and more productive, and also in every, well, I did a demographic study which I was talking about a couple of weeks ago. Okay, forget about it, but it was a big study, and this study showed that when you look at every discipline, STEM discipline today, 5 million scientists, there are more women than men coming to those disciplines. More young men and young women coming to those disciplines. So this is surprising, and this is enormously interesting. When you look at publishing young people, publishing young scientists, they are much more or a bit more men than women. And I have a nice figure for every, I studied 16 STEM disciplines, and in every discipline, I have a pyramid with age. And when you look at the bottom age, like no more than 10 years of publishing, the share of women is higher than the share of men. Okay, it's a very nice, I use it on Twitter, by the way, if you want to find it. In every discipline, there are more publishing women than men, if you think of young people.
And Yusuf Oldek's reminding us that there are other things apart from just publishing and publish. And of course, attending and taking part in CG webinars are amongst those other important activities, which fortunately are now on record. So we have some, we can demonstrate our productivity in this regard as well. Mark, I'm going to ask you about a couple of things that are teasing at me a bit. One is, as someone who's watching the data all the time and picking up the most recent data from Web of Science and Scopus, are you seeing any effects of recent geopolitical shifts? I know it's probably too early to see changes in, say, the collaboration pattern with Russia, Russian scientists. I mean, it's only been a few months that war's been going on, and Ukraine as well, which will clearly be affected in some respects. Too early still, but what about the China stuff? China-US collaboration, China collaborations with other countries in Europe, for example. Have you seen anything yet in terms of has there been the expected downturn in China-US collaboration?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big issue. That's globalization and nation states and science. We are talking about individual scientists, the globalization, all of us being so bloody internationally collaborating. And then we see nation states, and we see US, and we see China, and we see collaboration between the two giants going down, not for a year, for 2 or 3 years. And in the future, I believe these changes will be even more visible for Russia. So, well, Russia is not a giant in terms of scientific publications, but still it's bigger than Poland. So there's a lot of publications. I can imagine collaborative patterns will be changing due to political reasons. And it's absolutely new. In the past 30 years, we didn't expect politics to be intervening so much in collaboration patterns. Well, if you think of Poland, you are not allowed to collaborate with Russia. You are not allowed to go with public funding to Russia or to pay or within grants to Russian colleagues. So there's enormous pressure. Similar in the US, Simon, you know so well, China-US. It's a big story in which scientists are put off from this collaboration for many reasons, including well, lack of acceptance by admins or lack of funding for the future. So yes, big changes visible in the next few years. I'm sure about it.
Yeah, that's my view too. Now I'm going to ask you about something quite different. And this is just one of those little things that sort of sits in the question all the questions around interpretation of data, the importance of first named author and the importance of corresponding author. I mean, you and I both know that a first named author can be an alphabetically early author in the alphabet order, or it can be a person who's the primary author of the paper, or it can be the senior person on a team, the leader of a team. I mean, how do you deal with this? How do you see this particular indicator? And what about corresponding author? Is that something we should take any notice of, or is it too ambiguous?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it all the time, or most of the time. Is it corresponding? Well, the best data are about corresponding authors, affiliations, emails. You can think of surveys. That's a perfect source of potential data, corresponding authors. But is it as important as first and last author? My thinking is I would focus on corresponding authors because, well, patterns differ from discipline to disciplines. In some, it's really alphabetical order. In others, it's first author who is important. In still others, it's last author. I would say it's too difficult to choose unless you focus on a simple discipline, say mathematics or say economics, then you can follow. But if you think more globally, for me, the best approach is corresponding one. It's somehow highlighted with email, with a full affiliation, with full name and first name and second name, at least in last name, at least in Scopus. So corresponding author is my interest if I go in this direction, but it's generally hard to make those decisions, and so far we didn't apply any of those approaches.
So we can say with some certainty the corresponding author is an important person in the team, if not the most important. Whereas with a first named author, you never know. It can have
exactly
more ambiguous. Yeah.
Unless you focus on a simple discipline and you know the rules in this discipline.
Yeah. Good. Okay. I think we've got to the end of our time, Marek. I apologize for the difficulties today, and you know you're a megastar of our series, so we do want you back despite the difficulties which you've had to endure on this occasion. But you're, as usual, original presentation, full of good data, lots of thoughts about questions asked about interpretation, not all settled very responsibly, not all settled in the presentation, and for further investigation. And very responsible, I think, intellectually, and people find your work enormously stimulating and valuable. You're kind of opening up a whole mega field for higher education studies, and joining us to Studies of Science. You're, I think, creating something which many other researchers will follow you on in future years. So, as I said, we do want you back. Let me tell you all, folks, that the next webinar, which is on Tuesday next week, will be concerned with the normal university as a distinctive Chinese model in the 21st century. Ruth Heiho and Han-Tien Wu will take us through that topic, and normal universities in China. Very interesting pattern, I said, essentially on the French normal school, and which had its influence in Russia and then China. But what it does mean is that education is a central discipline. Other disciplines are relating to education, and that's so different to the low status that education as a discipline has in some other parts of the world, where it's a sort of looked down upon as the preparation of a lower status profession, teaching, compared to, say, medicine or engineering or law, and regarded as a second rate. So Chinese model, very interesting, and some of the strongest comprehensive universities in China are in fact normal schools. So there you are. So Ruth Heiho will tell us all about that, and we look forward to seeing you all back again to discuss the normal school model on Tuesday next week. Thank you all for participating, and thank you for your questions, and thank you, Marek. And from me, bye for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye. It was a great pleasure. Bye-bye again.